What's going on, fellow A-plusers? It is I, your host, as always, Adam Perez, back once again with another review and breakdown as we're going to go ahead and get into Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 4, Part 4, however you certainly want to say it, as we're going to go ahead and get into this particular week's episode. So thank you for continuing to join us each and every Thursday, going live at 1 p.m. Central Time for our Obi-Wan Kenobi reviews. And we got 2 more episodes left, guys, episodes 5 and 6 of this particular limited series to certainly look forward to. And I don't want to say I feel like this season has a lot of heavy lifting still to do, but there's definitely aspects towards Obi-Wan's life in regards to what he's truly been up to for over these past 10 years, if you will. Some more meetings and conversations I really would like to kind of see him have, see some of his thought processes and things like that. And so I am kind of hoping that within the last 2 episodes that they really kind of focus a little bit more on that. And while we definitely had some great Obi-Wan Kenobi moments, you know, with some of the supporting characters and Leia and Reva like that, they clearly are taking up some airtime, and I have absolutely no problem with that. I'm a big believer in the idea of building and creating other powerful supporting characters that you certainly have. Hopefully, though, without necessarily taking away from Obi. And again, we have had some great Obi-Wan Kenobi moments, but I do feel like there's still a lot of meat on the bone that certainly needs to be kind of discussed and figured out here. So we'll see how the last 2 episodes go. But while I'm personally really enjoying this series, there definitely are some ups and downs, a little bit some roller coasters, if you will. Episode 4 this week, while I walked away enjoying some of it, there are aspects to it that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of. Probably, I don't know if I wouldn't even want to go so far and say the weakest episode I've seen. I almost feel like maybe episode 2 was probably the weakest that we've had so far. And then this would probably be right next to it. So while I didn't mind this episode, I definitely felt like it certainly could have been a lot better, especially based off of the craziness that ensued when it comes to episode, or I should say part 3 of this particular season, after we've seen Obi-Wan and Darth Vader kind of meet once again. So I was really hoping that they would build off of that momentum, and it really felt like they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit, and maybe they're certainly holding on to that for the last 2 episodes. That's what I could certainly hope for. But again, when it comes to episode number 4, aspects of it I didn't mind, but there are definitely some things that I certainly had issues with. So let me just go ahead and get some of the issues sort of out of the way, shall we? And that's really in regards to, I feel like a lot of this stuff is just subtleties. One big thing was, if I was Obi-Wan Kenobi, I would have been pissed as hell at Tala for abandoning Leia the way that she certainly did. You literally had one job to do: get this girl to Alderaan. And listen, I would almost even have trusted the idea of Tala at least getting Leia to the ship. Like, if you want to come back and save me, that's fine, but get her to the ship, on with the pilot off planet, and then come back and certainly find me. And Tala felt like it was certainly more important to go ahead and save the life of a Jedi instead of the little child. Now, granted, we do get to see maybe a branch of the rebel base here in this particular episode, as we get introduced to, I can't remember his character name, but we had O'Shea Jackson Jr., the son of Ice Cube. I think you can also find him in what is it? Um, damn it, the fucking Compton movie. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's Straight Outta Compton, excuse me. And so he was in this particular episode also to go ahead and help Obi-Wan out. We get the opportunity to see Obi-Wan inside of a Bacta tank, having a little bit of some flashbacks and some moments to meeting Darth Vader again, hearing his words. I actually appreciated what Deborah Chow did in that particular opening sequence, because for a second there, when they're scanning Obi-Wan's body while he's in the Bacta tank and it goes down his arm, and then all of a sudden it's just like no arm there, and you quickly realize, oh, they've switched over to Darth Vader's body. I kind of like the back and forth there, and sort of the turmoil that Obi-Wan is kind of experiencing, some of the visions and the thoughts that he's been having since their last encounter. I mean, talk about scarring, not just physically, but clearly emotionally also. So, you know, the first thing that I would have done once I got out of the Bacta tank, yeah, I probably would have yelled at Tala. Like, the idea is he's like, where's Leia, sort of thing. Like, yeah, you have a lot of explaining to certainly do, and now you've got me going on a little bit of a mission. And so, you know, one of the things about this, and again, this is all subtleties about things that kind of upset me or took me out of the episode. I don't want to say it feels like we're retreading episode 4, But I feel like we've seen this story before when it comes to Leia, right? The idea of her being captured. She's lying once again in regards to where are the people hiding that we're looking for. Leia still doesn't want to give them up, sort of thing, right? Doing the same thing that she just did in episode 4. Maybe she felt it worked here, so she would do it again later in her life, but unfortunately, to the demise of her entire family and things like that. Maybe you can look at that situation sort of the same thing. Again, somebody having to break into an Imperial base, trying to find Leia to go ahead and rescue her. I mean, this is like literally the mini plot of episode number 4. You know what I mean? That we're kind of seeing hints of. So I do wish that there were other aspects and things that they could have done for this, but we do get the opportunity to see Obi-Wan in a really tense situation inside of this new fortress. I think the guy called it the Fortress Inquisitors. I don't know if that's really the title of it, if that's official or not, but there is usually a sense of like dread and intensity that usually happens. I feel like anytime that you've got to sneak your way around an Imperial base, and I thought for the most part, the episode did at least portray that for me a little bit. But there were aspects of I felt like I've kind of seen this before when she's much older, sort of thing. So I kind of wish I didn't necessarily rehash that, but maybe treaded on sort of new ground, if you will. Not to say that everything in this episode was very much that way. I mean, goodness, we got ourselves some great lightsaber sequences in here from Obi-Wan Kenobi as he's going down the hallways. I've always been a sucker of good reflecting bolts back at people, sort of thing, blocking them with their lightsaber. So to kind of see his mastery at this, I thought was pretty great to see, especially after him being caught very flat-footed and by surprise by Darth Vader. We haven't really seen Obi-Wan Kenobi's skills quite like they were when it comes to Revenge of the Sith, but it is kind of cool to see that, you know, he's still got some training and some skills in his bag when it certainly needs to come through. So really great intense moments there, especially just the idea of the base flooding, him trying to hold back the water with his force, and then, you know, finally unleash it all, sort of thing. So again, some great moments in here, but unfortunately just really unbalanced by some of the direction and storyline aspects that just didn't necessarily work for me. Again, some other subtleties. The idea of Obi-Wan coming into the base, leaving the body in the pool. Like, why does nobody just hide these bodies anywhere? The idea of Tala talking openly on the mic while officers are literally sitting 5 feet next to you, sort of thing. Of course you're going to get caught, girl. Of course people are going to overhear your conversations, especially when there's no mute button. You can't even stop people from hearing Obi-Wan trying to talk back to you, right? It's like, who wrote these plot lines? Like, it's just one of those things where it's just everything just seems completely obvious. Like the idea of Tala, hey, come back with me, we need to have a conversation, and they take Tala from her station and they literally go right around the corner and she kills a man, and nobody else in that section hears somebody choking to death. Nobody turns the corner and sees there's a body laying there. There's no motivation to hide the body. I mean, these people getting caught should not be a surprise based off of just the trail of bodies that they're certainly leaving behind. So there are times when I wish that the writing was just a little smarter than what it certainly is. There are some levels of laziness in the sense of just trying to get to the main point or the bigger picture, if you will, of the episode. So yeah, those are like just the subtleties, the little things, but when you compound them and they start adding up, you start thinking to yourself like, man, how have these people not gotten caught since they've been inside this Imperial base this whole entire time? And also, I honestly wasn't the biggest fan of the escape sequence at the end here. And I think for me, it's more visually than anything. Seeing some of the pilots come flying into the Inquisitor base to go ahead and pick up Tala, Leia, along with Obi-Wan, that's cool and all. But then Wade, the other pilot, like seeing Reva reflect with her lightsaber, that's cool, but literally you've got a spaceship that's 5 feet away from you, sort of thing. Like visually, it just was not appealing to me, and I think they probably could have done a lot better in regards to the special effects towards that sequence with the fighter pilots coming in to kind of save the day. So I definitely had my my hiccups with this episode. Some things that I do want to certainly talk about, though, that I took away from really enjoying. Let's go into the Leia interrogation real quick, because this is a scene that I think some people might find certainly cringeworthy, and there is certainly an argument here that this scene really makes Reva look weak. The fact that you're an Inquisitor and you can't break the mind of a child, and some people will look at that and just be like, "Man, that's just terrible writing." For me, while it looks bad, I will definitely agree with you. There is an aspect here that makes me realize two things. One, Leia is clearly more powerful in the Force than maybe even she personally knows. This kind of also reminds me of The Force Awakens in the sense of Kylo Ren trying to break the mind of Rey, not knowing who she fully is, or what she's capable of, but learning in that moment the fact that he can break her. Oh my goodness, you're pretty strong in the Force, and her kind of turning the tides on her. I kind of get the same thing when it comes to Leia, in the sense that her excuse for not being weak-minded, clearly she's got the sass of a 30-year-old inside of a 10-year-old body. I'm sure that definitely hurts. She's pretty bright in her own sense, but also the fact on top of who her daddy is, the Force, her abilities. And while she may not necessarily know how to use it, her pushback against another Force wielder is probably there. And so for me, that doesn't necessarily bother me. And I think it also goes to showcase us maybe the strength or the weaknesses of some of these Inquisitors, right? Like, there's a reason why these Inquisitors aren't Grand Inquisitors. There's a reason why they're not Darth Sidious or a Darth Lord. When I look at them, I feel like they are very much still dark lords in training, if you will, apprentices that haven't maybe fully tapped into their own capabilities and their full power. And maybe Reva at times maybe takes on a little bit more than even she can certainly chew, right? Like, there are moments in this season why I've thought to myself, like, why isn't Reva like pulling these ships down? Like, if these people are literally trying to get away, the transport in episode number 3, or was that episode number 2? I was just waiting for her to like grab it with her force and like yank it back down, sort of thing. Same thing with the pilots at the end of this episode. Instead, she decides to go ahead and take a bomb and throw it towards one of them, and that's more than fine. So there's a part of me that thinks maybe Reva as an Inquisitor just isn't capable of doing something along those lines. I don't think we should go into it assuming every Sith Lord that we see has to be as powerful as Darth Vader. I do think they probably all have their pros, their strengths, and their cons, their weaknesses. And so the fact of Reva, who seemingly, again, is not a Grand Inquisitor, wasn't even the next person in line for the job, because the fifth brother mentions the idea that he's the next up. I don't even think Reva's the most powerful Inquisitor that we've seen, but she has the intuitiveness and the determination to certainly get the job done as best as she can. So I'm not going to harp on the Leia interrogation aspect too much when I look at the much bigger picture of things in regards to who these two characters are. But I will say this, man, Moses Ingram for me continues to impress. Regardless how you feel about Princess Leia, I do think in the scenes that Moses has been in, she's been one of the great parts of those scenes. For me, I tend to really gravitate towards her as we get to see that she's in the process of interrogating Leia to find more Jedi, figuring out where these safe houses are. She even brings up the path, thinking that because Leia was certainly located in one, maybe she certainly knows more than she's certainly letting up. And again, I think that certainly goes back to her past. I've been saying this since episode 1. I believe that she is one of the younglings from the very intro scene to this series, and I think she's holding on to a lot of animosity for these Jedi and certainly want to go ahead and take them down. So I do find her story extremely interesting. And I will say this too, while there are moments where she shows her weakness, I think it is important to also point out that she knows exactly what to say to Vader when she needs to, right? We can harp on the interrogation scene if we want to, but she has managed to go ahead and make Lola a tracker to go ahead and hunt Obi-Wan down. And the only thing that matters is Obi-Wan, and that is the only thing that Vader certainly cares about. I think if the other Inquisitors had sort of that level of determination to find Obi-Wan like Reva does, Darth Vader would definitely have them by his side, to certainly say the least. So what she makes up for in maybe some of her Force weaknesses, she definitely makes up for in her smarts, and also knowing how to pull strings of her own and knowing exactly what people certainly need to hear. So again, I walk away continuing to be impressed from Moses Ingram in here. Talking a little bit about Obi-Wan Kenobi, we do see him infiltrate the fortress Inquisitors, and he winds up discovering a Jedi tomb. And I thought that was actually a pretty chilling scene. I don't know all the characters that are certainly in there, but it feels like these are definitely force sensitive people that have been captured over the years since they've been hunting the Jedi. Clearly some are Jedi, others are not, probably just force sensitive people in villages that had people calling on them, calling the Empire like, hey, I think there's a Jedi that lives next door to me, sort of thing, right? Like people just giving up other people, because again, not everybody was in some form of Jedi robes. So I do think that they're just, if you're force insensitive, you're on the radar of the Empire. So I thought that was actually a pretty chilling scene to see, along with the great lightsaber work that we wind up having from him again. And I will say one of my other great moments in here in this season, or this episode, was after they escape and they're, Obi-Wan and Leia are chilling on the ship, and Leia and Obi-Wan are sitting right aside each other, and they look at each other and they just have a very sort of sentimental moment together, holding each other's hands and things like that. For me, the sense that I got from Leia in here is that this is an episode that kind of really made her grow up a lot faster than she probably had any business doing so, right? The idea of having a grown-ass adult, an Inquisitor, as terrifying as she is, being vocal and boisterous and, threatening to hurt you and kill you, sort of thing. This is clearly her first time ever being in that kind of position, and it really does feel like both of these characters, and Leia and Obi-Wan, have really changed since their encounter with the Empire this season so far. And it just felt very much like they understood the grief and the hurt and the fear that each other was going through, and that these two characters are very much changed from their experiences here in this particular episode alone. But again, enjoyable moments that I can definitely pick and choose out of here. Some really great character moments also, but again, sometimes the writing tends to falter a little bit. And I don't even think this episode was Deborah Chow's finest work in regards to directing. Some really great shots, some really great scenes and things like that. Great choices for editing and putting this episode together. But then again, some really questionable decisions directing and storyboard wise for this particular episode. So again, not one of my greatest or favorite episodes, but decent enough for me to enjoy. But man, I definitely had my my nitpicks with this episode for sure. So if there is any pushback about this, I can definitely understand from some people. And then again, I will say this, just a quick honorable mention in regards to O'Shea Jackson that played one of the rebels in here. I did appreciate the fact that he seemingly confirmed that he was married to a Jedi, that the Inquisitors hunted his wife down also. It does make me wonder if one of the people inside of that Jedi tomb that we saw, if maybe that was like, maybe his wife was in one of those capsules that we got to see briefly and just did not know that that was his wife. But it definitely makes him understandable to the Jedi's cause, trying to help the Jedi certainly get where they need to go as far as being a part of this path, this underground railroad within the Star Wars universe. And I love the fact too that he's very much aware as to who Obi-Wan Kenobi is, even referring to him as General. So I don't know if they've ever had any connection in the past when it comes to the Clone Wars, but Obi-Wan Kenobi's name and recognition alone definitely holds some merit with people still. So the fact that he called him General, I thought was actually pretty cool, and just kind of threw me a little bit back to the Clone Wars, if you will. But we do see him reluctantly agree to help, despite knowing how dangerous it is. Just the idea of having Obi-Wan Kenobi around, and we do see that one of his people falls in regards to Wade falling in the sense of helping him out here. But guys, listen, I want to know your thoughts at the end of the day. These are just simply my A plus opinions. I certainly want to know yours. What did you guys think of episode number 4 of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Where does it land for you in regards to your levels of enjoyment of the episodes this season? Were you a big fan? Were you kind of in the middle like me? Or did you think this episode was just pure trash? Go ahead and certainly let me know your thoughts. I jump into the live chat real quick. I believe we've got Marcelino Vasquez in the house. He says, O'Shea Jackson Jr. was in Den of Thieves. I haven't had the opportunity to check that out. So thank you very much for that recognition. Yeah, man, if you guys haven't had the opportunity to check it out, definitely do so. He also says Jedi Master Sunube, maybe Quinlan Vos, and some people even theorize that Mace Windu is in the Jedi Tomb. Ooh, listen, I know the idea of Mace Windu being alive has always kind of been pushed back against, but I have always felt that there's maybe one story out there left of a surviving Mace Windu out of the events of episode number 3. It's always been a theory of mine out there, but I feel like I want to say it's almost kind of been put to bed that Mace Windu is kind of done. I feel like maybe people in Lucasfilm believe that Mace Windu certainly met his demise, but if I didn't see nobody, never say never. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, maybe Mace Windu's in there. I don't expect Quinlan Vos. I feel like I'm under the impression by the name drop in episode number 3 that Quinlan Vos is maybe still out in the world, certainly doing his part. I definitely hope so. Marcelino says, I was hoping Obi-Wan would make the Inquisitors better because Rebels at first made them look good, but then they turned into incompetent cannon fire. Obi-Wan only made them look worse. I would agree with you to a certain extent there, Marcelino. I won't agree necessarily fully, but I mean, look, if you were to tell me, if I didn't know anything about the Inquisitors when it comes to Star Wars Rebels, then yeah, I would say, yeah, man, these guys are pretty weak. You know what I mean? So if I was really new to the franchise and had never seen the Inquisitors before, I don't necessarily know if I would be that impressed with them when it comes to this. But based off of what I've seen them do in Rebels, again, and I take into consideration that they're not a Darth Vader. They're not a Darth Plagueis. A Darth Sidious. They're not even a Grand Inquisitor himself. These very much do feel like the underlings here. So I can understand people feeling some type of way like, man, why do we have to use the Inquisitors in this sense to just kind of get beat up on? But, during this time period, man, when you still want to capture the Jedi versus Sith mindset, the idea of still at least as far as making appealing television, right? People love to see Jedi versus Sith. You kind of want to include them in some capacity. Could they have been showcased in a much better light? Probably, right? I mean, we had Grand Inquisitor die within the first 2, skewered by his own. But for me, I've really enjoyed at least the clash the Inquisitors have had with each other. The Reva and Fifth Brother stuff for me is pretty entertaining to watch, if you ask me. And while I do think that Reva is not necessarily the strongest Inquisitor, I do feel the way that she's portrayed herself shows her to be, I was going to say competent, and I still probably will say competent, because even though Vader was pretty much pissed off of her, I think the idea that she has a backup plan, that she's come through, right? She did capture Leia. She did cause Obi-Wan to certainly come back. She did go ahead and put a tracker on her. She's clearly doing things that are working for her. So I guess it's just a matter of your own personal viewpoint, how you feel. But I will agree to a extent that I don't think they've been done any favors in this series. But I can understand where the Inquisitors are at least in this point when it comes to the Star Wars timeline. Oh, and you're going back to your Mace Windu thing. You say some people don't want Mace Windu to come back because they don't like it when characters who died have implied deaths come back to life. This actually is a reason why some people abandoned Marvel and DC, because death at first had meaning, but it turned into a joke. And I get that. And again, I think there's a reason why I specifically said I think there's one good story left in Mace Windu. And I think for me, his story would end in a heroic sacrifice. if he might have dodged death in episode 3, but maybe he doesn't this time, and really going out the way that he certainly deserves, or probably wants to, So I do think that there's one good one after that, but then yeah, feel free to go ahead and kill him off. But again, nobody's confirmed that Mace Windu is certainly alive. That's clearly just a theory. And look, we got a couple Jedi that are certainly alive during this Obi-Wan Kenobi time. I'm still waiting for a Cal Kestis a cameo, whether or not that appears or not, who certainly knows. I think it would be great to have Dominique Monaghan on this show if they were to go ahead and certainly make that happen. But again, for me, at this point in time, with just 2 episodes left, I'm going to need all the Obi-Wan Kenobi dialogue that I can get, very much like we did very early on in this season with the focus much on him. This felt like an episode devoted to Reva and Leia. And again, I don't mind, because we do have some great Obi-Wan Kenobi action in here, but I do feel like there is some heavy lifting that definitely needs to be done when it comes to episodes 4 and 5, or I should say 5 and 6. Maybe another encounter with Vader, and really give me some amazing detail in regards to Obi-Wan's life and just where he's at currently emotionally. So if they can capture that within the next 2 episodes, they definitely will continue to right this ship. So guys, again, these are just simply my A+ opinions. At the end of the day, though, I definitely want to know yours. Still really enjoying this series. I think it's been quite impactful. Some really great moments in here, but I'm definitely not ignoring some of the nitpick and really questionable questions when it comes to some of the story aspects and decision making here for this series. But overall, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. But listen, at the end of the day, these are my A+ opinions. I want to know yours. Let your thoughts be known in the live chat or the comment section box below, guys. And we'll definitely go ahead and continue to talk about this week's episode in the live or the comment section until next week's episode. So until then, guys, feel free to join us this upcoming Sunday for another episode of A+ Hero Report, live Sunday at noon Central Time. And if not, we'll certainly go ahead and catch you guys next Thursday, seeing you live at 1 p.m. Central for our Obi-Wan Kenobi series. But other than that, guys, that's going to do it for me here. In the meantime, do me a big favor. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the Force be with you. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.